Hey there, Tina.
Hello.
I feel like that discussion on the annotation keys suddenly took like a whole different turn there. Get some new faces for people that haven't shown up for a while. Derek and John. Wow. Whoa. John. Liking the hat.
I was told we were discussing HTTP semantics. Thank you.
Async delete. That got everybody's attention.
Jeff promised me he'll be here to discuss that, but he needs to be a little bit late.
Okay. As long as he makes sure to sign off on the Zoom after we're done. He didn't do that last time for a couple hours, so I had to learn how to edit a recording. Those were fun times. Hey there, Jory. I feel like I missed the dress up day and put something fun on. I can put my hood on.
I'm obsessed with John's hat right now.
Thank you. I like your graffiti.
Thank you. I painted it myself.
Wow.
All right, well, we're a few minutes after here. I think I finally fixed all my, I don't know, fix is the right word. I was upgraded Zoom and suddenly it stopped breaking stuff, but I don't know if it was upgrading Zoom or if it was just a regular upgrade of anything else. But I can share screens again, so I will do that. Got a few small ones here, just like things in the review queue to do. One is just to clarify the canonical JSON requirement. I got a check from TNON on this one, so maybe John, you'd be up for putting a check on this one as well. The verbiage we changed in here isn't too crazy. We moved JSON out from under the canonical section, just gave it its own little top level section there, and said that it needs to follow the IJSON limitations. There's an RFC for all that good stuff. All it's really saying is UTF-8 should be double precision numbers, float 64, and must not contain duplicate entries in there. So you can't have two different created dates or something like that. And otherwise, canonical can be done, may be done, and there's an RFC for that. But originally, we were telling everybody you're supposed to be doing canonical JSON. Nobody was doing canonical JSON. So hopefully this one's pretty easy. And the check is there. Awesome. Thanks, John. Let's see. Hey, here's another one. modifying the workflow trigger on main. This, I put the check on there. It looked like Tianon, you and I were kind of back and forth. Do we care about this enough to make it go for another round of changes and reviews and everything, or do we just want to ship it as is?
I don't have a real strong opinion. Although, to your point about solving a problem we don't have, I see the YAML in there as solving a problem we don't have. Being specific about the branches is solving a problem we don't have too.
Yeah.
It's
I mean,
six of one, half a dozen of another.
I was mostly just copying and pasting from stuff that I'd already had. I wasn't really trying to make a change there more than just fixing the fact that what this is fixing for people that aren't aware is our little thing says no state, you haven't done anything, because we don't have this action running on the merge itself.
And it's not the rendering running on pushes that I care about so much as the linting, because the linting is something that we would fail a PR on. And if there's like some intermediate PR and it doesn't get that linting, then you don't find out that your intermediate PR was bad until you merge it and make a real PR.
Yeah, but we don't do that today. When we start doing that, I'll approve the change. I don't feel strongly against this either. I just hate to make him go back and forth for another one because he went through a handful of rounds of me saying, change this, change that, change the other thing.
Yeah. Personally, I think we should remove the badges from the README entirely, but that's a whole separate thing that isn't even worth commenting. I don't feel strongly about this one either way. So
Okay.
that's why I haven't reviewed it officially.
Okay. So if there are other maintainers that do feel strongly enough that says we want to fix the badge, go for it. Otherwise, that one's just sitting in the review queue. Alrighty. Yeah, there's been a request. This was a long request a long time ago, but it kind of popped back up again with a separate issue of someone trying to solve the same problem. Where folks were asking about, hey, can we add some details about what subpath within a repo someone's doing a build in? So they have a mono repo, a whole bunch of stuff all sitting there, and they wanted to have some way to update that and define that here's the path we're doing in there. And this went back and forth a whole bunch. I think some of the points were that, hey, you can point to a path, but that doesn't point to a specific image. And I think people were trying to narrow this down to an image being built. And so one proposal I've got in there is, hey, would it be easy enough just to say it's an instance? I think my phrasing in there was that phrasing, that little part that says, hey, if we just define an instance, you can differentiate multiple images that you're building within your repo. And then the comments kind of came back and said, yeah, but we want to do other stuff with that path. And the other stuff with the path is where I start to have comments and concerns. And so I commented down there, but I wanted to raise this up, make other people aware. If you have opinions, feel free to chime in.
Maybe I can turn this into a pithy one-liner. Here's my thoughts on the matter. If I have a tool-specific need, I should have a tool-specific annotation.
I feel like the advantage of having the instance is that all this stuff is saying, here is your specific Git commit, here's your specific Git reference hash, whatever you want to call it, that you checked out. So you've got that pinned to that explicit bit of source code, but there's no way to say, here are the different 4, 5, 10 different images we built off of that and how to differentiate them from each other and be able to say, okay, I've got this old image, I need to switch over to this other image that's on a newer commit, newer version. It's kind of a deduplication thing or a, some kind of unique key in there that people might need. But when it comes to the external tools, I think I was agreeing with you, Tianon, that yeah, if we're gonna start going for other things in there, yeah, if you're doing that separate annotation for each tool, and at that point, the tools will define their own annotation. I think I was agreeing with you at that point. All right, you're all being quiet, and I saved the best for last. So unless someone has another comment here, we'll jump to the one that everybody showed up to the meeting for. Sound like a plan? All right.
Yeah, let's talk about HTTP.
Folks want to chat about this. Jeff, you raised the issue. Do you want to launch off on this one?
This was me posing a question. We're playing around with the addition of, Docker Hub finally implementing the manifest delete API. And the way the spec seems interpreted is that deletes can be async, and almost the spec seems to indicate that deletes should be async. So this is me more just clarifying that, yes, that is the intent, because it kind of seems that from a user perspective, that is maybe unexpected and or undesired, but also seems perfectly valid. So this is not me trying to change the spec. This is not me trying to do anything more of a, is this interpreted correctly? And if it's not, should we update the spec accordingly to what is actually desired there?
The current spec language says two contradictory things. The text of the spec says that the delete should happen immediately, where the status code of the spec says that it should happen asynchronously.
I would say this kind of aligns with my comment earlier that I had with you, Jeff. Once a delete goes, any tag or digest should give you a 404.
Well, it just says once it's deleted. It does not say once the delete request. Not to mention all the other, if you're also doing refers and you have to update things asynchronously around that, there's likely to be some sort of a delay around it.
So let me ask this. Do you, for your registry implementation, need it to be async? Would you prefer that it would be async?
I would say in the try not to getting into details. In the 99.9% of the use case, we were trying to do things synchronously. That said, we have the Brandon Mitchells and the Tianens of the world that like to push up index files that have like 10,000 nested manifests in them, or such that when working inside of HTTP timeouts, we are running into some issues on some of that. So in the general use case, no, synchronous is fine. But in the we must cover all use cases, I think we were essentially at the point where we had to do an async implementation in order to make it not blow up when Brandon touches it.
Just for the record, I didn't have 10,000, but I did have an infinite loop in there.
So, I mean, I think the async is probably preferred just from that standpoint, because people do a lot of weird things. And that kind of gets into the what is sort of a reasonable time for that to be resolved type of thing as well, and or how do we handle the intermediate state? Or maybe as long as it's eventually consistent, that's fine too. And maybe the right answer is it's fine as is. These are implementation details. Nothing needs to change.
My comment in there when I was saying as someone that Antithesis would be good if it was documented comes from answering Stack Overflow questions. And so it's nice if I don't have to say, hey, I talked with the developers and they told me this was happening. It's a lot easier if I can say, here's the blog post or the documentation or whatever that defines when that's going to happen. People like URLs to back things up. John, you got your wizard hat on. I feel like you've got some knowledge to drop on us here.
I mean, nothing new. I think in the ideal case, processing a delete wouldn't take forever, but with 5 megabytes, I could imagine there being sufficiently many nested, or not nested, but just child objects that it would take too long to check that those exist or not, etc. I don't know. I have no wisdom. I like respecting HTTP semantics if we can. So, 202 or 204 meaning something would be very nice. That's it.
Yeah. I feel like we missed the opportunity to make it a 202 or 204 way back in the day.
The spec mandates that it must be a 202. That's why we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
Because
if we could-
202 means that it's happening asynchronously.
Yeah. If we were designing this from scratch, it would have been a good opportunity to say, okay, let's make the decision now, given that it's already been made for us. I think we're kind of locked into it.
I mean, it feels like the more forgiving of the thing to be locked in because it allows registries to have asynchronous implementations, right? But of the two worlds we could be in, I like this one.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think 202 is probably the right one in most of the cases. And the case where a client wants to ensure a delete, yeah, it kind of forces them to loop over it to check, but I think that's rare and I think that's fine. And I don't mind add that to the language if we want to, but I'm almost fine with the way it is.
Say at Jeff's point, though, we're kind of ambiguous because to me, if I was reading this strongly implies that if I ran that, I got my 202 back, that I should be able to run that query immediately and get the 404. And our test case even implies that. Just does it poorly because we had a fallback in there. Because we're explicitly saying, hey, as soon as we do this, we should get a 404 unless the delete is disallowed. And then that's where you had this, either one of these, an or condition in there and allowed the 200 to come back.
Yeah, that doesn't say much, huh?
At this point, we're basically saying, yeah, it should be a 404 or 200, whatever you do. Should have been more conditional on what was the result of this delete. Did I get a 202? And if so, then I can do the conformance on it.
But Jeff, to be clear, what you're saying is that the implementation you're working on does do it synchronously, or what's the...
The implementation is, I think, technically going to be asynchronous. It will be asynchronous, but immediately kick it off. And so 99% of the time, race condition wise, yes, by the time you go and check it, it's going to actually be gone. But that's not going to always be true.
Yeah, I mean, I think even just from the perspective of caches and everything in between, from an HTTP perspective, it's almost never synchronous. So like, even if we put language in there that said a 200 means it's gone and a 404 must happen after, I don't even think that's realistic to say.
I'm guessing if I look back at that conformance history, that it probably added that 200 at some point. That goes way back.
I mean, are you thinking we should add language to say it must eventually return 404 without any further intervention by the user, essentially, or like it should result in a 404, but it might not be immediate, and it might not be immediately after, but it doesn't require another request in order to happen.
That would be good clarifying language in there. In general, when I'm thinking about this from the other side of that, writing the client tooling, that client tooling needs to know that if they run a delete, things happen. People might be doing a put immediately after your delete, or vice versa, and you don't know what other clients are talking to that same registry. You need to be a little bit fault tolerant in there.
I mean, yeah, it could have an issue with like immutable tag type use cases, maybe. Although I guess this doesn't even really apply too much for that, right?
You could also have some kind of eventually consistent backend that you might be talking to one node and then run a query on a different node.
Yeah, but yeah, I think that's a good reason why we wouldn't want to ever put in language that required synchronous. But we can just make that clear that we're not trying to say it should be synchronous. Because I don't think anybody here was saying async is bad. And I don't think there's any clients out there that are expecting it. So it's just a clarification. So someone else doesn't trip on it in the future.
If I may, I think most of the deletes are we don't need this image anymore and they can be delayed. I can imagine somebody doing this for privacy. This should never been published or something like that. And in that case, they would probably want to know that it is really gone from all the replicas. But that's probably extremely rare.
Should there be any language if you delete it, say I get a 202 and then I issue another delete, we say it should 404, right?
Well, now that's a whole different question. I
Like,
would say a get would 404, but a second delete,
I mean, in theory, yeah, the 202 means it's going. You should just trust it. But when is more of a question of like, I think that's always the case of if I want to really make sure something is deleted, I need to go and fetch until I get that 404 because you don't know when the caches are flushed out and everything. So like you want to know, hey, something is gone. If from a client perspective, like I think that's probably the way to do it.
now the interesting phrase we put in here is that if the repository does not exist, it's a 404, but not if the tag or digest doesn't exist.
Well, that's almost more interesting, right?
You can delete something, say delete again, and the registry can just say, I don't see it. Sure, it's gone. 202.
I mean, it might, yeah. Especially if it's asynchronous.
I think I did this 7 years ago because I misunderstood what idempotent really implied for the server. And so a delete for something that's not there returned a 200 instead of a 404. And now I regret that decision. Somewhere there is a registry that returns a 200 if something doesn't exist when you delete it.
200 or 202?
You never know. One of them. Probably a 202.
From this language, that looks valid. There's nothing here that says if the manifest doesn't exist, it must return a 404 or anything like that. It's It's just if the repository doesn't exist.
Okay, who wrote this? We need a new spec.
Yeah, let's kick
Well-
off working group for V3.
Yeah, and whether or not the repository gets deleted when the last manifest gets deleted is another whole.
I wasn't going to go there, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah, we've specifically danced around garbage collection in this whole spec, just like we've danced around auth, so that we don't ever say it, but it's always implied, at least somewhere.
When in doubt, rely on what HTTP specifies, right? Isn't that kind of what we said? So I think it's perfectly valid for Jeff to go to the HTTP spec and say, okay, well, this is what it says, so this is what it should do.
Yeah, my biggest fear of doing this is just the client side, but I'm not that strongly opinionated on that, just knowing that clients can't make any assumptions.
I think this would be a more complicated discussion if this were on the put, not the delete. An asynchronous put is much scarier than an asynchronous delete. Because when you put something, you're probably going to put something else that relies on it. Like how you have to put the blobs first, and then put the manifests, and then put the index. And if those were all asynchronous, then you'd have to have like a retry loop on all those later puts in case you talked to some other instance. So those have to be synchronous. But delete, like, yes, I guess maybe you have to delete the manifest before you can delete the blobs, but deleting the blobs is already something that's complicated because they're much more likely to be referenced by more than just that one manifest. So asynchronous is mostly fine here.
All right, so who wants to make the PR to update some of the language here to make it a little bit more clear?
Is our goal to make the spec match reality better, or do we also want reality to change at the same time?
I feel like there's not a lot of reality around deleting manifest.
It sounds like a question you'd ask with that hat on. We want to change reality. I say keep reality the same.
Okay. I say that because, like, when you return a 202, you're usually supposed to return something that someone could poll or check to see when it's done. Maybe the implication is that the resource you just tried to delete is that thing.
Does that apply for deletes? I get that you would give a location on a put.
I don't think the RFC really distinguishes. Maybe I haven't read all of it, but yeah, maybe with delete it's not as necessary. So the PR we want to put together is just acknowledging that this is potentially asynchronous.
Yeah, just throw one sentence in there. It just indicates the registry will eventually do it. Maybe a sentence right after upon success, they're just saying this may happen asynchronously.
Does this satisfy all concerned parties? Particularly Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, I'm fine either way. I think it was more, is this a clarifying language thing? So, yeah, I think just calling it out that it's a possible thing and that's okay, is fine with.
I'm tempted to talk about deletes in general because I'm kind of curious how this is implemented other places, and I wish we could be more helpful to clients. Maybe when I've implemented deletes, it was important to maintain the integrity of anything that referenced the thing being deleted, and so we would check to make sure that there are no incoming references to the manifest /blob. And the annoying part is that if we rejected the delete request because there was already something pointing to it, then you'd have to figure that out kind of as a client. And there was no structured response that said, oh, I can't delete this because it's being referenced by this digest or this tag. Please delete those first. And that's, I wish we had that. I don't know if I want to open that discussion here, but is it just me? Does no one else implement something like that?
Hold that
There's
thought
no
for like 5 minutes. I'm going to interrupt real quick. So Jory, let me let you jump in before you have to go. And I know also Sam wanted to talk about KubeCon EU.
Yep, that not even 5 minutes, 2 seconds. The CFP for Container Plumbing Days is now live. That is going to be up through April 13th, but in all likelihood, we can probably extend that too if we feel like we don't have enough submissions. I've blasted our Slack. I have dropped a link to you in Zoom. I have blasted a couple of other email lists. But would appreciate your help just sharing that CFP. It's in Amsterdam, if you love Amsterdam as much as I do. Then Sam will touch on this as well, but we've got a room for you all set aside at KubeCon EU, which is the first week of April for a meeting. And I'll let Sam take feedback on whether the proposed time that we have works for everyone. But let us know if you're going to KubeCon and you're going to be there for that meeting, and let us know if you've got an excellent talk for the CFP for Container Plumbing Days in August. If you would like to be involved in the talk selection or kind of just the programming activities as well, hit me up. I will add you to that mailing list. And that's it.
Sam, did that cover what you were looking to get before Jory has to jump?
Mostly. The only thing was the room that we have right now for KubeCon is 10 a.m. on Tuesday. I just don't know if anyone who's on the call is going to be at KubeCon other than me, and if anyone else is interested in meeting, but that's the time that we have a room. So if you are at KubeCon and that's not going to be a good time for you, please let me know. Otherwise, we're going to confirm that room. And Jory put that it's 2 hours. I'm hoping we don't need that. Don't need 2 hours, but we have the room for that long.
Bring some food, coffee, snacks, turn it into a party.
Sam, I'm pretty sure
Ding.
we could talk about HTTP semantics for 2 hours.
But do you want to talk about HTTP semantics for 2 hours? Because
Why do you think I'm here?
John dressed up for this.
Is that your HTTP costume?
It is, yeah. I put on my robe and wizard hat.
HTTP 2 costume.
Awesome. Thanks, Jory. Didn't mean to keep you so late on this.
See you guys next week. Bye.
All right. Sorry to derail you there, John.
I was
Circle
already
back. Ask your
tangential.
question again.
It's not really a question, I guess. Like, is there willpower to add like a useful error here? Maybe. I'd also like, am I modeling deletes differently than other people? I don't know.
I think my take on there is I think I thought somewhere in the spec it did say that if you delete the manifest, the tags should also be deleted. So I don't, or at least I thought that that was in there somewhere.
I think they may be deleted. So we specifically implemented like tag deletion and digest deletion as separate semantical things where semantic things where you can untag by deleting the tag, but the digest remained. I know other registries will like auto GC all kinds of things, but
Yeah. Well, it's a Docker Hub. Well, if you delete the tag, you delete the tag. If you delete the digest, you would delete the digest and the tag. So,
if you
but
delete a child of an index, does that
that fails? Yeah, that returns back a. I forget if that's I think it's a denied request.
Is that a 4 or 5 method not allowed?
I have to double check what the error code is, but if you try deleting the child manifest of like an index, that is rejected.
But John, is part of what you're saying that you would like that reject to include a structured error that tells you why?
precisely?
So like if I wanted to delete some blob, it tells me, oh, you can't delete that blob because of manifest X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, so I could implement crane delete dash force and like it would walk backwards up the graph until the registry is okay with it. Or maybe dash R, but then that would usually go the other way.
How would Crane do that from the client side?
If the registry returned a structured error that said, I cannot delete ABC because it is referenced by D, E, F,
Okay.
I would
so
D.
So the registry would give you that digest.
Yeah,
what if it's a structured warning?
Whew.
I mean, the error code being the error code, since that's already defined, and then an additional header to say used by.
Within the error structure, there is a place for like arbitrary details that we could put it.
Were the structured errors deleted as part of the? Oh, they're right there.
Yeah. I've got it. I still got it.
So we do already have structured errors in the spec.
We have the code, we have the message, all the details unstructured. And the message is, I think it's just this text, right?
Yes, we could define a new response that duck types from the detail. And if it is our, like, I don't know what to call it, our like referential integrity thing, then the client could surface that to the user agent and say, hello, would you also like to delete this?
So you're looking for like a manifest in use type of error code.
Yeah, I just want like a descriptor. I think maybe like errors could, we already have a list there, so maybe each one could be its own error and have just a descriptor as the detail or something. Or even a digest.
Text there says the detail can be arbitrary JSON.
Yeah.
Can be.
Can be, yeah. Implementation defined.
Optional implementation defined, and is effectively going to be some kind of duck typing in there. You're just going to be searching through for any digest you find in that output.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to force the registry to give me a whole digest because I actually only need the ref. And maybe it'd be more expensive to produce the digest. Yeah, because like I bet often you store primary keys and you probably don't have the media type and size, and you'd have to do an additional query to produce it. So
that would be the full descriptor. I'm just thinking just the digest.
Yeah, if I just had the digest, and like in the case of Google properties, a tag sometimes. That would make me happy, but I'm just me. I don't know if anybody else wants or needs this or would be willing to implement it on the registry side.
I would say from a Docker Hub perspective, what with the newish delete API that we did, very alpha does return this as a custom format, but again, it's not the OCI standard manifest delete. It's an internal one, but it does return back if it's used, here's what it's used by. So implementation wise, I think this would be great because then we can just ditch the internal one entirely and just do the OCI one. So I think we would actually be able to implement this pretty easily, and yeah, I think it'd be pretty nice.
I'm
Maybe I
pretty
should
sure.
propose it.
I mean, I would say alternatively, unless there's a way to actually list manifests as another endpoint, and then dependencies on that manifest. But that's probably a separate can of worms.
This is what I wanted from the refers API, but I didn't get it. And this is why I wanted it.
Sorry. I'm pretty sure that the distribution project, at least V2, I don't know if they've changed this in V3, you can delete out from under an index.
Oof. I wish that required a header or something.
Wouldn't that require enabling the sparse feature? Because otherwise it compromises the data integrity.
It compromises the data integrity.
Yeah, because if that's true, then that's a bug, unless sparse is enabled. And you should file it. So you should
think
go
it's been
create a
a-
reproducer and file bugs.
I think it's trivial to reproduce. It's been there for a long while. But that's my recollection is that you could do that. There are a lot of things that could delete stuff out from under an index back in the day. Garbage collection would delete stuff out from under an index. That was fun. But the other alternative I've seen, I was hoping that was going to take me back up to this, is that people would implement the tag delete. I've gone too far. They would implement the tag delete, but they would not implement the digest delete. And that way they could handle the garbage collection on the digest themselves and make that decision, but the tag is always pointing to something.
I mean, with what John's proposing, you could implement that on the registry side by having the digest delete say, or by having the tag delete say no. No, the other way. Having the digest delete say no, you can't delete this because X, Y, and Z tags still reference it. You need to delete them first.
The implementations I feel like that have been coming to us on this one, just they're back at 4 or 5 and say, not allowed. You can't do it on the digest. You can do it on the tag,
But I
but you're
mean,
not allowed on the
they
digest.
could do a more nuanced implementation by saying, hey, you can delete this digest, but you have to delete all the tags first.
I think they might have implemented either their own garbage collection or a very fast garbage collection. Like I've seen some where as soon as that tag is gone, those digests just boom, they're out.
I think that's unfortunate.
Because they came back to us and said our conformance test was not valid for them because we would go through and start deleting stuff, and our deletes of the blobs were being, there was a race condition where their own internal garbage collection would race it as soon as they started deleting the manifest. All those blobs were disappearing out from under us before the conformance test can finish running.
Do you see that as a reason not to propose something like this, or just like background information?
Throwing it as an alternative instead of having the registry go through and do all the recursion for you and letting you do a force delete on an individual digest. I've seen the alternative is just saying we don't even care about deleting manifest by digest for a lot of use cases out there. We just want to get rid of the tag. Once that tag is gone, let GC handle everything from there.
That seems like a different thing from what I'm talking about.
So I feel like what you were saying was you wanted to actually delete the individual digest and then work back up to figure out which tag to delete to get rid of that digest.
Not quite, but well, no, maybe I do agree with you. Yeah, but I think the model of automatically deleting something that's no longer tagged is like not good. So I don't want to just delete a tag and have it delete stuff. I'd like to keep it around.
Kind of the whole point of a content addressable API, right?
Precisely. I want there to be an explicit request to delete the thing from the client if it's gone.
But we don't have a lightweight untag, just like we don't have a lightweight tag. You cannot ask the registry to create a tag from an existing manifest without re-uploading that existing manifest.
I'd say we have a lightweight untag, we don't have a lightweight copy tag.
Well, we do have a lightweight untag, but it's implementation defined. Some implementations will treat that as a heavyweight untag that also deletes, and some treat it as a lightweight untag as John describes. And the
There's
spec
also-
doesn't really give guidance either way.
Because we don't talk about garbage collection.
You're neglecting to mention the middleweight tag or middleweight untag, which is retag the thing to nonsense and then delete that, so that you are not explicitly deleting the thing you want to keep. You are just moving the tag away from it first, which I don't know who showed me that, but it made me very upset. And I think it has different behavior depending on your registry, because I think Docker Hub won't delete something that has ever been tagged, maybe.
If it
Maybe that's
has
changed.
been tagged and if the tags still exist, is my impression.
Wild. Good. Okay. That makes
So
sense.
it's in the tag history is my impression, but there are people here that know that answer better than I do.
Oh, so a tag pins anything that it has ever referenced? I love that. Great.
No, yeah, that's not true of Docker Hub at this point.
Okay. Yeah, the phrasing that I'd heard a long time ago was that tags had history, and so as long as you were in that history of the tag, it was preserving it.
We do track the history, but that doesn't keep it from being deleted.
Okay.
One thing, Brandon, you mentioned, and maybe you misspoke or maybe I misunderstood, is that like you said that I wanted the registry to recurse, but in my model of this, the client is recursing based on each response the registry returns. So the registry would only be responsible for returning the next level up and not recursing. Yeah. Cool.
We're on the same page. I wasn't first hearing that you were saying the registry was going to give you that digest back, and I was trying to figure out how on earth you're going to get that digest.
Yeah. Okay.
Which, if the registry cares about data integrity like it should have that data handy, because it has to use that data to answer this query with, no, you can't delete that. Anyways, John's just asking for it to return the list in addition to the yes or no answer.
Yeah.
See,
my present workaround for this is to just delete everything in a loop until it's all gone, which is a bit weird.
So what is the end user goal of doing that? Because they've got that specific digest there, they would hopefully know what tag that digest came from.
So if you have the same manifest referenced by two different tags, which is fairly common, or if you have like two different parents referencing the same child, which can also happen, then you might not know, you don't have a pointer to the other thing very trivially. Like in the first example, if I have v2 and v2.2 pointing to the same thing, then I can delete v2 and I might not realize that v2.2 is there.
I feel like that's one of those cases where, from the end user standpoint, if you don't know there's another tag pointing to that thing, maybe that's something you should know.
Which is, so when I try to delete it, the registry will tell me that in English, and I'd like it to be in JSON, so that instead of me copying and pasting English as a human or piping it into a plagiarism machine to do it for me, I could just have the client prompt me to say, hey, this thing also references that, and you can't delete it because of this thing. Would you like to delete this other thing too? Just a little point of friction.
Yeah, I was going through the path in my head because it sounded like you wanted to make this automatic, make it a flag. And if you make it automatic, I'm just imagining that someone will say, hey, just delete this thing and not realize all the other stuff that just got blown away because there was some index that referenced a whole bunch of stuff in the repo.
Yeah. I mean, there are definitely contexts where I would want to just have it ripple, regardless of the consequences. But at the very least, being able to surface this in an actionable way to the client consistently would be really, really nice.
Tnon's going to blow away 10,000 manifests with one accidental command.
The thing I'm surprised you haven't brought up, Brandon, is how this interacts with referrers.
The interaction with referrers is entirely registry dependent.
That's what I like to hear.
Mainly because we never define garbage collection.
Okay, I'm gonna put up a strawman PR somewhere eventually, and if people hate it, then I'll stop. But it seems like no one hates this.
From my own lazy registry implementation, I just disabled deleting manifest because I didn't want to try to worry about the data integrity. My integrity is on the push, and my integrity is on the garbage collection. And as long as the only thing they can delete are tags, I don't have to worry about the checks of anything else.
Yeah, to implement data integrity on delete, you either have to scan the entire registry or you have to maintain a database of connections, integrity connections.
Yeah, and maintaining that database was not something I wanted to do with something that's just an OCI layout. So that's an extra bit of data that the layout doesn't have. And so generating is something that's a lot easier to do when I do the garbage collection. Similar for blobs. I think there are a fair number of registries that just don't support the blob deletion. They won't do that on garbage collection. They don't want the clients doing it for them. All right, that's getting close to the full hour here. Anything else people want to chat about? The stop share button works for me for the first time in probably almost a year. It's a happy day for me. All right, folks, if nothing else, circle back next week. I'm going to be very envious for the whole rest of this week on John's hat. I'm going to be like surfing various shopping sites, see if I can find something just that awesome, and it's never going to happen.
You
So,
too can find such things on the internet.
I'm sure we can. All right. Have a good rest of your week. Cheers, all. Thanks.
You're a wizard, Johnny.